Hey, everybody, welcome to What the Flick, People vs. O.J. Simpson, Episode 5, The Race Card, Jayar, Alonso. Just when you think that this show is somehow departing from the craziness of the reality of it, no, this stuff all happened.
It's still going on. I'm still intrigued every episode. I'm still thinking, how did I live this and not know all this happened? I have to keep going. Did that really happen? No way. They totally embellished on that. There's no way. But
I know, and I mean, I was and am older than you, and I still did. I did not remember the guy having a heart attack during the initial proceedings.
I was totally intrigued by. We'll get to that. But of course, the whole episode started back in 1982. Mm-hmm. Johnny with his two young daughters in the car, and his Mercedes getting pulled over in L.A. or Beverly Hills area, something like that.
Beverly Hills.
And it just shows the fire that Cochran had. Again, it's one of those things I said, okay, I'm sure he got pulled over. I'm sure he got harassed. Did this whole incident really happen? And did this build to who he was and why he ended up being the guy he was on this case?
Well, and the thing is, it doesn't even have to be about what, I mean, yeah, sure, that's certainly a step in creating Johnny Cochran as Johnny Cochran, but I think it also sort of makes the point for the LAPD, if they have this kind of ill will that they have generated throughout the community. I mean, beyond socioeconomic level, but like just if you're black, period, this is going to be a thing. Then the idea that, as Malcolm X would say, that the chickens are going to come home to roost takes this perfect confluence of a black guy who is also rich and famous and who is beloved, who quite possibly murdered someone, but sorry, LAPD, no one trusts you now because of all this other crap.
And you open up the doors for all this to happen. So I think, that theme being for the whole episode itself was the breakdown of how there's a black prosecutor, obviously, Chris Darden, and then also the defense attorney, Johnny Cochran, who are now starting to really collide. And I think I wasn't sure to the degree to which Darden was like the pupil of Cochran, because as we saw, Cochran was assistant DA at one point, so all this happened. So it's his career being how it folded into this, and now this collision course has happened where it's basically like, I do remember this part, even though I was young, that Darden was seen as the Uncle Tom, the how dare you come after OJ, and you're on this side, really? And then so we get to see it from his perspective, which I think is also intriguing, because then he has to fight that.
Sure.
The line about having to go through affirmative action times when he was specifically qualified and he got looked at a certain way, and he's having to deal with that all over again. All these things you really start to feel for Darden.
And plus the fact that we've already seen up until now, just on the show, that they hired Cochran on the defense side because they needed a face that wasn't a white guy, And so now for Cochran to then accuse Darden of somehow being this token, it's kind of like, okay. It's really interesting to look at this show while also watching this season of Better Call Saul, because both shows are sort of about legal ethics and where the line of legal ethics is in terms of winning the case, and all the things that you do to win the case no matter what, but what's considered too much, and so it's just, there's an interesting parallel happening with both.
So even as you're maybe upset, depending on what side you land on, upset about the nature of LAPD and the way they've treated people over the years, and then seeing the way Johnny Cochran has spun it to help win the case.
Right.
Again, it's well put together, so you're still torn. I like things like that where you're like, yeah, no, totally, he's on the right side, but no, wait, he's on the right side.
Well, yeah, exactly, and again, it's that sort of thing, it's that sort of. It's like Jurassic Park, oh, they're all female, so they're not going to spawn. The idea of the LAPD thinking for decades and decades, well, we can, step on black people, and what could the possible blowback be? How is that ever going to come and bite us in the ass? Right. Ta-da! Here's how.
So another big theme of it I enjoyed was, again, it was back with Darden with how he was given the task of Mark Furman and the birth of Mark Furman, the meeting of Mark Furman, the first prep cases or prep sessions for his potential testimony on the stand, because he's the guy who found the glove. How, as Marcia Clark said, only one guy found the glove. What else can we do?
I'm also loving on this episode the appearance of Robert Morse as Dominic Dunn.
Oh, yes.
Because perfect casting. And, you always hear the expression about, I'm going to dine out on this story. But Dunn, you would literally see him dining out on the OJ story.
Yeah, so it was, and that's what I was looking for. I didn't remember his name from that point, but this is when a hush comes over the whole room. It's like, let's stop talking about this for like 15 seconds until the coast is clear.
Oh, and then of course, what did you think of the blackening of OJ's house?
Oh, yeah. So again, another one of those things that I'm sure it happened. It had to, right? I mean, why else would it happen? And then OJ's response to all of these things, he's so uncomfortable with all the things that Cochran was doing that helped him. And he has to keep convincing him, listen, this is your life.
Right.
We're again, as he mentioned, we're going to tell the story better than the prosecution's telling the story because none of us were there. And he had to keep convincing him because, again, OJ's thought was, I'm OJ. I'm not black, I'm not white. I'm
Sure.
OJ.
Yeah, because Cochran says, you know, this is about creating a narrative. And it's not just the narrative of walking the jury through the events of the evening, but it's the narrative, it's the larger story of who OJ is and how does he fit in the world and the face that he presents to the world, which, you know, as the naked picture of Paula Barbieri is now replaced with his mom in a wheelchair, you know.
Can't leave that one out.
Yeah, and I love Get Off My Bench. That was like
again.
woo.
I was like, someone had to have a camera. Someone must have recorded that. I would love to see that in real life.
Or at least it came up in the interviews in the Tubin book.
Where someone has to talk about it. So again, when every time I'm seeing things like this, I like to try and find out what the reality of the look of everything was. So okay, Bill Hodgman on the prosecution team was upset about how the defense team revealed 14 new witnesses out of nowhere. And we know the law when it comes to trials, you have to reveal your evidence, or at least your witnesses you're going to have, so there can be preparation for the side, obviously. So all this happened, and then the heart attack went down because he's a stressed out guy. It's a huge case. He's having to go through all the details, the minute details. So I looked up this article, and I said, this must have happened in the middle of the courtroom if he collapses on the ground, everyone jumps around him. People magazine, apparently in 1995, was reporting on it. Hodgman did, in fact, collapse during his time on the case. We do have a video of that moment we were talking about when he was complaining about the new witnesses. Let's see if he collapsed.
Your Honor, I hope this is a file. This, up until today, this is the extent of the defense discovery to the people. Under California law, there's supposed to be reciprocal discovery. That's part of playing fair. That's part of playing the game fair. The people have been severely prejudiced today, Your Honor. Severely prejudiced. This conduct is outrageous and unbelievable. Now, in Mr. Cochran's statement this afternoon,
and I suspect you may unplug your computer and take it home with you tonight.
it may be a long time before I get home tonight, Your Honor.
Okay, he did not collapse in the courtroom.
Oh, okay.
But as they also reported, it happened hours after these opening statements, and it was during a prosecution strategy session. So it was probably in some.
So he collapsed that day.
He did collapse that day. It was a few hours later, probably still, of course, stressed about this particular instance.
Sure.
And he collapsed. And then also Gil Garcetti and the doctor that was tending to him also spoke about it, about his condition.
I can't answer that right now. It looks like he will be able to come back to the case. How soon, I do not know. He, I believe, is resting comfortably at this time, but there are still additional tests have to be made that perhaps the doctor could answer some of those questions.
Did he have a heart attack, Dr.
No definite evidence of a heart attack. He had a very brief, self-limited episode of chest pain this afternoon, lasting a very short period of time. But given what he told me, we felt it warranted to observe him overnight and have him seen by a cardiologist, and we won't know for probably 12 to 24 hours, one way or the other, but clinically he's doing extremely well.
So a little dramatic license.
Yeah, no, it was a little bit, but you know what? These are things that I think, I don't know to the degree to which people care about that, but yeah, I like that they did it this way. I mean, we don't have to see it later in a closed room. I mean, fine, it happened that way, but it's okay. It's the same difference.
This is drama, for God's sake. No, I think they're getting more right than fudged for sure in this thing.
Definitely.
Every week, I'm loving Travolta's performance more and more. I've given myself over to what it is he's doing. It took me a while to figure it out, but it's reminding me how off-putting the actual Shapiro was. I remember seeing him on TV and just finding him very kind of weirdly reptilian or something. So I think so Travolta is just leaning into that.
Yeah, I'm curious as to the degree of his involvement during these trial sessions because I like to look at the whole courtroom or even still pictures of when it happened. He kind of seems to slump and just kind of sit there angry. which of course,
which we're
what
seeing a
was
lot of
going
the behind
on.
the scenes. Yeah, he's pissed off a lot about a lot of things, you know.
And which seemingly they did point out it was his fault about how they didn't reveal these witnesses that led to Hodgman being upset and led to everything else. So that made me wonder, was that on accidental purpose?
Well, I think I suspect the way it's presented here is that he fucked up, and then Cochran uses it as another sort of stratagem, you know, and so who knows? Somebody out there, by the way, has already made a supercut of every time Kardashian says juice, which I love.
They did, huh?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You said that to us. I do remember that. Yeah.
So,
and actually, I think, you know what? Kardashian was not in this episode.
nope.
Right?
Nope.
Like he was there. We saw him, but there
Right.
wasn't any lines. He was getting out of the limousine, getting for the dream team.
I'll tell you, I was surprised. I happened to catch the clip of Kris Jenner on Ellen this week, and they talked about this show, and she gave this probably the most sort of moving human moment I've ever seen from that woman on television, where she talked about how, as Nicole's friend, she felt that she had failed her, not picking up on the fact that she was in an abusive relationship and that things had gotten so bad with OJ.
I saw that too, and I'm trying to get by the assumption that she's out there for herself, because that's what we always see. So as I was watching it, I was like, oh, this again happened. I think it was, I'm not sure if the interview was the day of this episode on Tuesday or if it was the day after. I can't remember. Either way, I was like, okay, man, she's got to see that this can come off. And as sincere as she was, you got to see how it comes off and try not maybe to only come out talking about this because this mini-series or some small series
Well,
is out
she
right
was
now,
asked. You know,
right, exactly.
And I'll give her the credit for that.
So that's the thing. It's just you have to be careful because I'm sure a lot of people are like, oh, here we go again. And you're not getting anywhere with it, you know?
Right, but and again, what we have to sort of remind ourselves, like, as entertaining as all this stuff is and how interesting it is to sort of look at it as these metaphors about, race and about celebrity and all these things. 2 people are dead. 2 people died in this thing, and they were friends, they were, sons and daughters and spouses and all that stuff, and, parents in some case, a mother. So, it's important that we not lose sight of that, because, and I do as much as anybody else. I mean, when the Goldman showed up in the show, I was like, oh yeah, right. There's grieving people here. It's not just these, all these lawyers, kind of doing their machinations.
Which I think is another good aspect of the show. They're keeping that aspect going. They're keeping that alive.
Yes, definitely. All right, this is great television.
Is this like the halfway point? I'm not sure how many I think it's 10.
I think it is. We might be halfway through. So what will happen next? Join us next time.